Wow. That's all I could say, folks, is wow. What a week it has been in the world of wrestling for the last 4 to 5 days. We had an awesome Payback pay-per-view on Sunday that I thoroughly enjoyed, a great Raw on Monday, and then NXT TakeOver Unstoppable on Wednesday, which never cease to amaze me. We've had 6 specials from NXT since February of 2014, and every single one is impressed in their each and own way. Wednesday was no exception. That it was a great show, but by far the highlight. I love the women's match, a really good main event, a lot of good undercard matches as well. But then we get to the moment of the show, the debut of Samoa Joe in WWE. So let's backtrack a little bit here. I've been watching TNA since August of 2008. I don't know if Samoa Joe was on that show. I believe he was. But he's always been one of my favorites in TNA. I've never had a chance to meet him. That said, though, I'll get back to that at the end of this little rant about my little back history about Samoa Joe. I'll get back to that in a minute. But, I've been watching TNA for the last 7 years by this point. And Samoa Joe was always one of those awesome attractions to me in TNA. And the thing is, and it's weird too, because I started watching TNA at the end of his real run. I know he was there for 10 years, but he was only really used arguably in the first 2 to 3 years when he was there. When he was undefeated, kicking people's ass in the tag team division and the X division, the main event scene. That was the only time that Samoa Joe, in my opinion, was ever utilized correctly by TNA. And this is not talking about, not even counting his Ring of Honor days where he kicked ass over there, where people say that he made a star of himself there, Ring of Honor made a star out of him, whatever. But, Ring of Honor, his run was awesome. I never really got a chance to see any of his work there. I got exposed to him during his time in TNA. So going back to what I was saying before, after, right when I started watching in late 2008, it was like a turn for the worse. For Samoa Joe and TNA. That was when he had just dropped the World Heavyweight Championship to Sting in the main event of Bound for Glory after interference from Kevin Nash, of all people. That should have been a warning sign for Samoa Joe how he would be handled in TNA for the next several years. And from that point forward, he did the Nation of Violence thing, which I thought was so stupid. The only good thing we got out of that was that awesome theme song that he had that I still listen to this day. Love that theme. And then he got fucking kidnapped, and that, from that point forward, people never took him seriously. He was never motivated. And that's the thing with Samoa Joe, because I'm not going to say right now that his WWE run is going to guarantee to be a success. We've seen TNA guys come over from TNA before and flop. Karma, I don't really count. That was kind of bad timing. Chris Harris, Christian, and R-Truth were already in WWE before they came back, so I don't really count them. Lance Hoyt is another guy, so Gail Kim, another person. So, and then those people never really had the backing of Triple H, so that's kind of the difference here. But still, I'm not going to say that it's guaranteed to be a success, his WWE run, but I will say that because of the past history of TNA people in WWE. But I will say this, though. If WWE can handle him a lot better than he did in TNA, then I think he has a very bright future ahead of himself, especially if he's motivated. That's the key word there. Samoa Joe did some of his best work, even when he was given shit. He made chicken salad out of chicken shit in TNA in his final few years there, when I was a fan. His tag team with Magnus, the main event Mafia stuff. During those periods in time, and I think early 2014 too, when he was vying for the World Heavyweight title, he was doing some of the best work that he had ever done in years. Some of the stuff in the X Division, late last year with Caval and Austin Aries, a few of those guys, great matches. But other than that, though, his final few years in TNA were very uneventful because of the way they handled him, and because of that, he was very unmotivated. He was not in the best of shape, and he's got in a lot better shape now that he's going to WWE. So in his final few years there, he really wasn't doing anything of note. It was like, Samoa Joe. But I always enjoyed him regardless. And then the bomb dropped in early January. I think might have been January or February. I think it might have been February. I think it was mid-February, yeah. When Samoa Joe announced his departure from TNA Wrestling after his contract expired. Now, I had been able to see Samoa Joe in person before. I went to my first ever TNA show, which I did a video blog about here on the channel last summer. Check it out here in the random video blog section of the channel. Last August. So I got to see Samoa Joe live and in action on that show, and again at the show in the also in the same arena in the Manhattan Ballroom, Manhattan Center in New York City on January the 6th. I think it was. Was it 7th? I think it might have been the 6th. I don't know. I think it might have been the 7th. I can't remember exactly. Probably the 6th. But yeah, great show. It was the 7th. It was the 7th. I apologize. January 7th, Manhattan Center, New York City, TNA's debut on Destination America. And I really enjoyed that show too. Great to see Samoa Joe up in person. And I think that was the night that he joined the Beatdown Clan too. That was kind of the debut of the Beatdown Clan. So that was really cool to see Samoa Joe live in person for that show. So I was able to at least see him in action before he jumped ship to WWE. And will I ever see him in action in WWE up and close in person? Hopefully. But still, that was pretty cool. But anyway, going back to what I was saying before, when he left WWE, or he left TNA, excuse me, there was a lot of speculation as to what was next for him. And there's a clip here on the channel. RJ and I talked about it on Wrestle Rant Radio, right after it happened back in February, speculating as to what was next for him. Was he going to go to WWE, go over to Japan? Personally, I thought he was going to Japan. I thought he was New Japan Pro Wrestling bound, much like AJ Styles. AJ has been doing some of the best work of his career over in Japan in the Ring of Honor on the Indies, where I got to meet him last year, which is pretty awesome. But I figured Joe, that's where he would be going because I said AJ, and I mentioned AJ. He's a guy that I thought would maybe not be WWE bound, but at least they would consider him, give him a look. And according to AJ, they never called him once. So, which is really unfortunate because I think AJ could do great things in WWE, but that's besides the point. That's another rant for another day. But, there was a lot of speculation, maybe like the week later, saying that WWE had interest in Samoa Joe, specifically Triple H more so than Vince or Kevin Dunn, who I guess who weren't really high on him, and fuck Kevin Dunn, fuck Vince McMahon. Triple H has a right mind for the business. I'm not the biggest Triple H fan from a wrestler standpoint, but as a businessman and considering what he's done with NXT over the last couple of years, he deserves all the credit in the world for making that, his baby, for making it what it is today. So even then, I honestly did not believe there would be a snowball's chance in hell of Samoa Joe being in WWE, considering, TNA's track record, the track record of TNA stars in WWE, how they handle them, etc., etc. I didn't think Joe would be interested. And look at that, he was. And, even with all the speculation in recent weeks, I had to see it in order to believe it. I'm one of those people, especially with something like this. And I know there was a lot of speculation on Tuesday and over the weekend that Samoa Joe could debut at the TakeOver special on Wednesday. And I thought that was way too soon. At last word, they had not even signed a contract yet. So I thought it was way too soon that we would be seeing Samoa Joe in WWE. So I didn't get my hopes up. I just was thinking about the prospect of him appearing on that show and just marking the hell out. But I completely forgot about it. The last word I heard about it even on Wednesday afternoon, that there was a big chance of him, debuting on that show. Didn't really believe it. I completely forgot about it. And then we get to the end of the TakeOver special, an awesome show, like I said before, on the whole. And Kevin Owens is beating the shit out of Sami Zayn. And I'm not even thinking about who should make the save. I just figured Kevin Owens would be laying out Sami Zayn again, much like he did at the last two TakeOver specials to end the show. And I thought, if anything, we would get an appearance from Uhaa Nation, who was in the front row. I figured maybe he would debut, or he would run in and make his debut, or somebody, And then the mysterious music hit, and as soon as that hit, we all knew who it was. Out comes Samoa Joe. And I've heard a lot of people say this, and I could not agree more. It's very, very rare that we get surprises like that in wrestling. Even though there was that speculation that he could be on the show, no one was no one was sure. Much like with Sting, that's kind of what it reminded me of when he debuted at Survivor Series last year. I know there were a lot of reports, more so than one with Joe, that Sting would show up at Survivor Series. And even at the end of the show, when I figured someone would run in, I figured it would be Randy Orton. It was St. Louis, his hometown. And out came Sting, and that was a huge moment that I still look back on as one of my favorite moments of 2014 in WWE. And it was one of those moments, man. It was one of those moments when Joe came down. I was marking the hell out. I brought in my brother, who was not the biggest wrestling fan, used to be, not so much anymore. And he was very happy to see Joe. I mean, he's very aware of his work in TNA as well. And in Ring of Honor, too. Just to see him come down and come face-to-face with Kevin Owens was literally the coolest thing. Maybe not literally, but you know what I mean, though. One of the coolest things I have ever seen. Not even only in the year of 2015, but just as a wrestling fan, it's one of those moments. For someone to make a return, which I'm always a huge mark for, I'm a sucker for a great return, whether it be The Rock or Ultimate Warrior or CM Punk or whoever, or Chris Jericho. I'm a sucker for a great moment like that. Like when I was in the building for Jericho's entrance last June in the greatest Raw, the greatest show that I've ever been to. And it was just phenomenal. Like I never knew. I know there was some speculation online, but I just didn't know about it, that Jericho would be in the building that night, and that came as a genuine surprise to me too, a huge shocker. Same thing with Joe on Wednesday, just seeing him go face-to-face with Kevin Owens, and just to see him in that WWE ring, an NXT ring, whatever you want to call it, with that WWE logo in the corner was surreal. I know I use that word a lot, but, that's the exact word I would use to describe the situation. I never thought I would see the day, to be honest with you. I am one of those doubters. I'm glad to be proved wrong. I was very happy to be proved wrong earlier this year when Brock Lesnar re-signed with the WWE. I never thought there was a chance in hell of that happening. So all these great things happening in WWE and wrestling as a whole right now. I mean, the situation with TNA is very unfortunate. I'm hoping for the best, and maybe I'll talk about that on Wrestle Rant Radio last week. Maybe I thought I was gonna talk about it here today in today's video blog, but I thought it'd be too bit of a downer, so I didn't want to, stress on that too much. I kind of voiced my opinions on that on Twitter. Like I said, I'll get to that on Wrestle Rant Radio next week. And, Lucha Underground is a lot of fun to watch. NXT, enough said. The main roster in WWE is doing pretty well, and all the indie organizations are kind of firing on all cylinders as well. So I mentioned before I was never had that chance to meet Samoa Joe, and I might have that chance later on this summer. This summer is shaping up to be one hell of a summer for wrestling, for me personally as well. But, this whole year in wrestling has been great, but this summer is looking to be red hot. Last summer for me was probably the best wrestling summer for me as a fan ever. I had a chance to go to an indie event where I met Matt Hardy again and Scott Hall, wearing my NWO shirt right now for life. That was a phenomenal show, phenomenal experience meeting those guys. Going to the greatest wrestling show I've ever been to, Raw. Last year on June 30th in the XL Center in Hartford, Connecticut, going to the Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame up in Amsterdam, New York, and then going to my first ever TNA show in New York City, which was a lot of fun as well. So last summer is going to be it's going to be very difficult to beat, but I think this summer might, has a chance at doing so, considering I might be going to the Legends of Wrestling event in New York City at Citi Field, and I think in a couple weeks, in about 2 or 3 weeks. That should be a lot of fun if I get tickets to that. And then I might be going to another show in between then and SummerSlam, which I'll be going to in August, which is the Northeast Wrestling Show on August 1st, 2015, obviously. This year, August 1st, Rey Mysterio will be there, Alberto El Patron, a.k.a. Alberto Del Rio from WWE, a couple of other stars as well, and Samoa Joe. That's the point I was trying to make. Samoa Joe will be in attendance for that show. If I can go, that would be great. I would be there in a heartbeat, but there is like an annual family picnic that we have every year, unfortunately, that it's going to be kind of hard to get out of. It's on a Saturday, so I don't know if I'll be able to go. Plus, it's in Connecticut. It's in New York, I apologize. So it's going to be a little hard to get over to that show if I was, to get tickets. But still, I think, seeing Samoa Joe up and close in person would be great. And right after his debut on Wednesday, too, I forgot to mention this, immediately after he debuted, immediately after that shit went off the air, and I was thinking beforehand, all day long, WWE, I'm a huge WWE shop mark, they have amazing merchandise, they had a sale where if you bought one shirt, you could buy 50% off, I think all shirts, that was Tuesday. Wednesday was... you can buy a shirt for only $20 as opposed to 25 or 30 or whatever. All shirts were $20. And I really, for the longest time, I wanted to buy a shirt for either Kevin Owens or Sami Zayn, two of my favorites right now in NXT. So I'm thinking, okay, best way to settle this, whoever wins the main event tonight, I'll buy their shirt. So, of course, typical to WWE, the main event ends in a no contest. So I don't buy either guy's shirt. Instead, I buy the shirt of the newly debuted Samoa Joe, whose shirt went up immediately after on WWE Shop. So I bought that. I bought one of the last remaining ones. I think it's out of stock right now on WWE Shop. Went like wildfire. It's crazy to think how fast those t-shirts went. And that should hopefully be here in a couple weeks or so. But yeah, going back to Samoa Joe, though, I think, the potential of him in WWE, I've talked about this at length before in articles. So I wrote an article for Bleacher Report back in February talking about potential opponents for him in WWE. I've talked about it on Twitter before. But, you look at the names that WWE has to offer, and the possibilities are close to endless. You have John Cena, Finn Balor, Kevin Owens, as I mentioned, Randy Orton, Brock Lesnar, #book it. That's the money match right there, folks. Lesnar versus Joe would be one hell of a match, one hell of a physical bout. But the matches and the star power that Joe can bring to not only NXT but eventually the WWE main roster is immense. If I could see him at SummerSlam or even at WrestleMania or something like that. If he's at WrestleMania next year, that'd be great. But, the future is now, folks. I've been saying it at length, at nauseum for many, many months now. Since January 1st, 2015, I've been saying hashtag the future is now. And I honest to God, do think it is. I mean, you look at NXT, you look at the main roster, you look at all of wrestling right now, we're finally getting fresh blood in the main event scene and all this other stuff. It's crazy to think how red hot wrestling is right now. I'm not saying it's the next Attitude Era or we're in for the next wrestling boom, but it's a lot of fun, to be a wrestling fan right now. What a time to be a wrestling fan. Like I said, I never thought I would see the day that I would see Samoa Joe in a WWE ring, and I could not be happier that we can finally see Joe in WWE. So Joe, welcome to WWE. Looking forward to seeing what you accomplish inside the squared circle. Welcome to the WWE.